Hello, Kansas and Western fans. Today we're going to start a new series on how to pour a 20-foot long river in HO scale, which equates out to about a third of a mile if prototypical length. And today we're going to start with the first step, which is going to be testing the pour based on the materials that I'm using in the river. And the materials that I'm using on my layout are half-inch plywood for the base that you can see here, and then foam for either side on the banks. And that's just basically the structure of the river. And then we're going to go ahead and add all the landscaping elements that I have, which is including real landscaping rock, using Mod Podge, glue, and caulk to seal up all of the edges that you can see. And we'll get some paint in there, add a little bit of grout for some texture along the bottom, and I guess we'll probably call that good just for the test. I don't want to use up too many materials, but I want to simulate basically the section that's on my river. So we're going to start here today, and you can see I already have pieces. I've got half-inch foam. This is left over from the construction of my layout. I decided to use 2 pieces of foam to equal a 1-inch depth, so I can pour a little bit of depth to this to see how that's going to work. And then if you've been following my channel, you know that I'm going to be adding a couple of dams in here because my 20-foot long section does decrease in elevation by about 1 inch from one side to the other. And so I'm going to be using dams to change that elevation in the river, which are going to look like waterfalls. So we're going to test that in here too as well. But to start off, I've got these pieces I just laid out on the plywood for now. I've got a semi-river shape cut in those so far. So the first thing I'm going to do is use this clear caulk, this DAP brand. That's what I've been using on the layout thus far to glue foam. This is extruded foam, that Pink Panther product that you can get at most stores, building supply stores like Lowe's and Home Depot. And I'm going to glue that down to the plywood with a solid bead all the way around the perimeter of the river to hopefully create a good dam for the resin so it doesn't leak out anywhere. And then we're going to get that glued down and get the edges carved. Right now I just kind of have them sort of rough carved. I'm going to put an angle in there for adding the rock along the edges, and then we're going to see what that looks like. So basically this first step is just to get this mold for the river prepared. So let me stop the video here and get that part done, and then show you what the rest, or what it will look like when we're ready for the pour, for this test pour. Okay, so I've got the foam glued down. It's fairly secure as it is, but now what I'm doing is I'm going back and, I've obviously carved it a little bit just to get rid of the sharp edges along the side and give it a little bit more of a profile. So now what I'm doing is going back with joint compound and giving a more smooth look, after which I will paint and then add some landscaping rock. So just want to share more of the stages, I guess, of just this test bed build. All right, so all the joint compound has been placed for the banks, just so I can make a shape there, and it's all dried. So the next step is going to be to go ahead and paint that. And if I didn't mention this before, even though I've maybe learned a few lessons from doing the layout landscaping work along the river, I'm going to basically just repeat the process. That way, when I pour the resin for this test bed, if it reveals any issues that the layout might have, I'll learn that here, and then maybe I can do some kind of a fix on the layout. So I wanted to include that note as well. So I'm going to get this painted up. Once it's painted, I'll be ready for the landscaping rock, and then we're just maybe a day or two away from pouring my first batch of resin. And by the way, that came in the mail yesterday. This is this Epodex, and that's the resin itself. This is the hardener. This might be the oldest bottle of resin they had in inventory, I don't know, but with the label the way it is, but not too worried about that. And then I've got some tongue depressors here, or craft sticks as Walmart likes to call them, and some plastic cups. So I'm very close. I'm getting excited. So we'll check back in once all the rock is in. Okay, so I've got the whole test bed painted. I just used a basic tan house paint, latex paint like I used on the layout, just for a base color, kind of middle between earth and rock, I guess. I'm not sure. It's not really that important, but I did use that on the regular layout, so I wanted to make sure to use that on the test bed, even though I don't really care how the color turns out on this necessarily. But then again, now that I'm mentioning it, I do care, because I am going to try to use the proper dyes for this thing that I'm going to use in the layout for the water itself. So I guess it's good that I'm going to go ahead and match the colors. Anyway, so the next step now is I'm applying a matte Mod Podge along the entire perimeter, both to continue to help seal. You can see there's a few cracks here, help seal those, and then as a gluing surface for my rock. So I'm going to continue to do that, and I'll check back in after I get the rock applied. Okay, so I have the rock applied along the entire riverbank and the ends. I wasn't going to try to reproduce the ends of the river where I just have some masonite damming that off, just because it's not that important. Not worried about the dam. I just have to make sure it's sealed at either end of the river. So I went ahead and just used the rock just because I did. Anyway, so the next step now is I'm going to go ahead and paint the riverbed, kind of this dark paint color that I used on the layout, just again to kind of reproduce what the layout has. That's more of a dark undertone, I guess, for the bottom of the river, and also to continue to help seal that bottom, although I think the paint color I did before probably did a good job of that. So just going to do the base color, and then I'm going to add this grout, this sanded grout, this gray color for some texture at the bottom, and get it in amongst the bottom of the rocks. I think one more step is I'm going to go ahead and paint some of these rocks that same tan color, especially at the bottom, just to kind of see how that shows through. I'm not sure if that's really necessary or not, but again, I'm trying to reproduce the layout on this test bed. So if anything comes out and screws up or, causes some kind of a problem, then I'll know that for the layout, so I can make an adjustment on the layout before I start to pour this resin there. Then the next step is going to be, I've decided to section this thing off in 4 segments with those little dams that I was talking about. And I think what I'm going to do with the dams, so I got a little bit of loose rock here, is I'm going to make them as small as possible because I don't want to pour this very thick, definitely not more than 1/4 of an inch thick. So I don't want to use too much rock. And then I think what I'm going to do is just use the caulk to draw a line from one bank to the other that will create the actual dam for the resin. So that will seal off each section, and then the rock I'll place up against the dam to hide the fact that it's a caulk dam, and hopefully that will blend it in. So that will be my task for today, is to get to that point, and then hopefully I'll be ready to lay some resin or pour some resin tomorrow. So I've got my dyes here now. I've got a couple of Vallejo model colors. I've got a flat earth, and let's see what this one is here. Intermediate green. Not sure which will work best, but that's why we're doing a test. So we're going to try that out. It's getting really exciting now. So hang in there, and we'll check in at the next stage. Okay, checking in again today. So what I've done is I've added some sanded grout to the bottom. I used a gray color because the gray color in the can or in the jar or whatever was considerably darker than this. So I was going to check to see if maybe that would be a good color. But as you can see, it's dried pretty light. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to hit the bottom of this with some burnt umber acrylic. This is just Apple Barrel brand you get from Walmart, matte variety here. And I'm going to thin it with a little bit of water. I've got my spray bottle here. So I'm going to darken this up, which would be a little bit, should be a better look for the bottom of the Arkansas River. It has a green tint to it, so this burnt umber, I think, ought to work out pretty well for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, let that dry, and then the next step is going to be, I've got these hash marks here for dividing this little river scene, I guess, into 4 equal sections. So the next step is going to be to draw that dividing line roughly with a bead of caulk to act as the dam. And so I'm going to do one dam at a time to see if I can even get the first dam to hold. And if it doesn't, then I'll know what to fix on dam number 2, 3, or I guess 2 and 3 for successive tries. So that's the next step. Let's get this painted, let that dry, and then we're going to try that bead of caulk to see if this dam theory works. So hang on, be right back with you. Oh, a couple of things. So after watching some more videos, especially the Epodex video, which is the brand of resin that I'm using, they recommended getting a digital scale. So I went to the store, got myself a digital scale. It goes all the way up to 12 pounds, I believe, which is way more than I should need. So I guess max capacity right there, 11 pounds. Way more than I should need, but that way I can precisely measure the resin. And then the other thing I did, since the chemical reaction, I guess, is pretty nasty, I went and bought an air purifier. I got this Levoit or whatever, probably a French word, from Walmart. And what I made sure to do was made sure it had a carbon filter in it to really work with those VOCs, those volatile organic compounds. So this is just $100 from Walmart. I do have this station set up near a window, so I'm going to open that window. But it's supposed to take up to 8 to 12 hours, I think, to cure. So that's the whole time that that chemical reaction is taking place. So I want to be able to have this air purifier to work on that so my whole basement isn't stunk up too bad. So we'll be trying those things out too. But if everything goes well, should be ready to pour tomorrow. And when that first section is done, I'm going to build all these videos I've done together for this test bed, and we'll show you how the first one went. So hang in there. We'll check in again for this caulk bead that I'm going to build for a dam. Okay, so that's what the burnt umber looks like. It's already pretty much dry, dry enough anyway that I can try my caulk bead. And I think that looks much better for what the bottom of the river might look like. And we're just not really going to know, at least I'm not really going to know until I give this resin a try. So that's another reason why I'm doing this one large test bed. And this whole thing is about 2 feet or 3 feet long, actually. The river itself is about 24 inches once you add in the foam and the rock. But that way I feel like I can divide it into about 6-inch long segments to each try something new or fix a problem that's broken. So we're going to go ahead and try to apply this bead now. I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera because I don't want to try to worry about dealing with the camera and doing the caulk the way that I want. So I'll show you what it looks like once it's done. Okay, so I have my caulk bead here, and as you can see, I went a little bit overboard on the ends of it. And the point of that is, and I'm probably still going to try to press it into place, is I'm not sure how much the resin is going to find its way around the ends through that rock. And that's my initial point of concern for leakage around this dam, is that it's going to try to find a way through the rocks. Now, I tried to pick a spot where the ends of the caulk line would meet up against fairly solid looking rock placements, I guess you might say. So I don't think I'm going to have to press it in there too much. And I'm not worried too much about the beads themselves on either end, because I think I can cover those with either rocks, like I'm going to do here, or I can paint it, because this is all paintable caulk, right? So I might be able to hide it that, or even after the fact, after the resin's even in, I can go ahead and hide those. But what I'm going to do now is place these rocks on one side. Now this is going to dry clear even though it's white, but what I want to do is try to hide the fact that there's a dam here. Now granted, this is all theory, so you're watching me try this for the first time, not ever seeing anybody do this, or seeing any kind of a recommendation. And so what I'm trying to do, and you can already see that the caulk line is not straight, right? So I want to hide the fact that this is a dam and make it look like a series of rapids where the water just pours over rocks. So what I'm trying to do here is create some random, semi-random looking rocks that would cause the water to spill over at this location. And I'm trying to use varying sizes because what I want is for there to be a place for the resin to spill over in places, or actually it would be the water at that point, because you want it to look like water is spilling over. So you don't want to create an actual dam, but I also want to reinforce this caulk a little bit and hopefully hide it to some degree. I'm not sure this is going to work, and so you guys are going to be watching this as I do to see how well this works. So I'm going to go ahead and place those. I'm going to let this caulk dry overnight so it dries clear, and then we'll be ready for our pour tomorrow. So stay tuned. Okay, everybody, I believe I'm ready for my first test pour, which again is just going to be this small section here. So what I've done is I've built a small dam, primarily using a string of caulk that's been surrounded by rock to kind of hide that caulk. Now, eventually what this will be is a series of rapids. So there'll be 2 more dams across this section of river. And what I'll also be testing once the resin pores are hardened is using Woodland Scenic's water effects to help hide that caulk. So obviously it's white. It's a clear caulk, but it's not dried all the way, so it's still showing white. but I think with the use of the water effects covering over the top of that, we're going to be able to hide that. And I have to wait for the resin to dry anyway, which is supposed to take a couple of days. So hopefully that will dry more clear by then. And if not, then I will have learned my lesson for the next dam, and we'll move on from there. But so what I've got is this Epodex again. It's a 2-to-1 ratio, so that's the resin there, and that's the hardener. I've done my calculation for this space, so I've written down exactly how much resin I need and how much hardener. And the weird off number there, the 2.31, the 0.31 is the weight of my plastic cups that I've already weighed on my digital scale. So I'm actually going for 3 full ounces, 2 ounces of resin, 1 ounce of hardener, and for each different measurement, because I have to use a separate cup for each and then mix them together, I've added that 0.31 for the weight of the cup. So I'm not going to try to film this. I'm going to be nervous enough as it is, this being my first ever use of resin. So I'm just going to show you the after effect once I've got it poured. So hang on, we'll be right back. One more thing I forgot to mention. I know leaking is a big issue with these, the use of resins. And so what I've done is I've used my little torpedo level there and some of these extra tongue depressors to kind of balance this little test table out as much as possible. Now, since I'm using such a small amount of resin, I'm not too worried about a leak getting out of control. I think I'll have plenty of time if I start to see it seeping out from somewhere around one of these edges that I can worry about cleanup. But for the layout pour, I plan to put down all kinds of drop cloths for painting underneath the layout in case it gets out of hand there. But for this little amount, just 3 ounces total, I'm not too worried about it. So we'll see how it goes. Here we go. Okay, well, I successfully completed my first pour. Measuring the quantities out was a little more difficult than I thought, because even though my digital scale is live, it takes a little bit to update. So as I was pouring it, it would take about a second to update. So I had to kind of learn how much I could pour from the bottle into one of the cups. And so what it became was I poured close to the amount that I needed for resin, and then end up having to recalculate to get the amount of hardener I needed. So that was a good learning experience right there. I ended up pouring 4 total ounces instead of 3, so I ended up wasting quite a little bit. So lesson learned there. But I think I've poured a good amount, although it's kind of hard to tell since it's kind of translucent. It's hard to tell if I've poured enough or too much. I kind of just watched the resin run up to the dam, and it looks like it's not overrunning anywhere, and I don't have any leaks so far as that I can see beyond the foam borders on this table that I've created. So I'm going to go ahead and just let this sit for now. I'm going to call this test number 1. I'm going to let it set up here for a couple days, and then we'll come back and check it out, and then maybe once it's hardened, we'll be able to tell better if I poured enough. I can always add more, so that's not a big deal. Since you can layer this, that's not an issue that I'm worried about. I just didn't really want to overtop the dam this first try. I just wanted to see if the physics of the dam would hold at all, because I have 2 more dams that I can build. So I think one of them I was going to go ahead and overtop to see the effect that created. So I'll probably do that on the next one. But we're going to call this test number 1 completed, and we'll come back here and check it in a day or 2 once it's fully hardened. So we'll see how it goes. So I'll check back in here in a day or 2. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes or so since I did the pour, and I can see how the material is starting to leach. It's actually leaching uphill into the rocks. This is kind of interesting. But it is starting to cross the dam boundary just a little bit. Right along the edge, which I figured was going to be an issue because it was difficult to really get the caulk shoved all the way up into the rock. So definitely have to make sure I take care of that, maybe a little bit better. But the leaching isn't bad. It's not all leaking out. It's just kind of leaching into the rocks there. So not that big a deal, but something I thought I'd go ahead and document. Now, in terms of bubbles, it appears that I do have a couple here. This material is advertised as being basically bubble free, and I think as long as those come to the surface, they should take care of themselves. But I'm not going to do anything because that's how the companies build this material. So we're going to see if those clear on their own, and if not, then I'll know the next time I'm going to have to do something about that. Okay, so now we're 2 days fully removed from doing this first pour, and it hasn't really changed since yesterday, except for now I can actually touch it and it's not tacky anymore. So I guess what that tells me is I at least mixed it right, because I know that if it would either, if the mixture hadn't been right, that it stays tacky because it doesn't quite combine chemically or something. So I'm just happy because it was tacky yesterday for sure to the touch, and now it's not. So that's at least good. And it didn't proceed any farther down the rock than what you see there, so that's good. So what I've done here is I went ahead and built my other 2 dams. I've added some more rock in the middle just for some general rock. I want to see how the larger rock shows through. And I think I might go ahead and do another pour today, a little bit later. But today's Friday. I'm going to go ahead and do an update video for the whole layout and discuss this a little bit more. But I think I'm about done with this test bed, because I think this last pour is going to tell me everything else I need to know. Oh yeah, and at the ends of the dams here, you probably can't tell, which is good because that's the point of using it. But I used that matte Mod Podge, and I really drizzled the heck out of it into the rock in the hopes that it would seal the ends of the dams. I did it on both sides, and with that matte product, you can't hardly even tell I put anything in there. So now it's just a question of whether or not it's actually going to seal that and do any better job to prevent this leaching that occurred. So might have to wait for this caulk to dry a little bit more. I'm not sure, but we'll see in the next segment here how the next pour turned out. One other lesson learned I forgot to share is I believe the riverbed is too dark. And once it gets that wet look, it just makes it even darker. So I'm going to experiment with some other paint colors. I almost forgot to brighten this up just a little bit because it shouldn't be that dark. There's not really much point in adding color to the water if it ends up being so dark that you can't see the color in the water. So we're going to try to lighten that up a little bit and see how that looks. All right, while I'm waiting for the caulk to dry on these next 2 dams, I decided to experiment with some different paint colors for the river bottom, and you can see I've got them listed out below here. This really dark one was burnt umber, and it was not that dark until I put the resin down. So I'm trying to keep that in mind, that the resin's going to darken the shades by however many steps. That's not something I can describe, but I decided to try this territorial beige because I thought, as dark as that is, then maybe this would be toned down to just the right amount. So even though that's extremely light for the bottom of a river, I decided to go ahead and try it anyway, and then I split it with this brown oxide that I found in my inventory, and like that so much, I did this whole section with the brown oxide. So we'll see how that looks. We're going to probably pour here in the next day or 2, so I will check back in when that is done. Okay, so this is the second test pour. This time I made about the same amount, about 3 ounces, and on the last pour I didn't use maybe half of it because I thought I'd reached the proper height, so I just stopped. So this time I decided just to use it all and let it overtop the dam because I was kind of curious what kind of effect that might give, so that's why you see it running off to the side. And now you can see how much lighter the color is on this brown oxide that I used over this burnt umber. So it'll be curious to see if that lightness continues. The other thing I did not do, I spoke with a subscriber last night who said their club did not color the resin. They just went with coloring the river or the bottom of the water feature that they poured. So I also tried that just to see how that would look. And I just did a basic coloring. I didn't try to shade the edges or anything like that to show more depth. I just wanted to see how it might look. And I'm pretty happy with it so far. Now, my test for the dam is probably not going to work that well because I let the resin overtop it because I want to see that effect. But I think it will work to some degree if more of the resin stays behind the dam. So we're just obviously going to have to wait a full day to see how much leakage goes through. But all this, I think, is just a result of overtopping it. As you can see, it's equally gone across the whole riverbed instead of over here where it just kind of leached up the sides of the banks. So we'll let this dry, obviously, see how it looks. Definitely getting some different pictures here with the two different colors. I would say that the territorial beige is definitely way too light, unless it dries a lot darker. But this brown oxide I'm really liking. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll check back in after it's dried. All right, we're back with the results of my second resin test pour, and I'm really liking the brown oxide color for the river bottom. I think that gives a good approximation of what the prototype looks like, at least in my eyes. But what I have definitely determined is these dams are not going to work. There's just no way to secure all the voids in the landscaping rock. You just can't see all that, and I could probably drizzle Mod Podge in there all day and still the resin would find it out. So I'm not going to worry about the dams anymore. That's fine. I knew that was a possibility. That's why I tested it, to see if it was possible it would work, but I knew it was possible that it couldn't. So I'm not going to worry about that. What I am going to do now is I'm going to do a third pour to go ahead and finish this last section. I was considering repainting it to the brown oxide, but since I've already decided that I like it, we're just going to go ahead and see what this earth undercoat looks like with resin on top. And I'm going to do a much bigger pour. I'm going to try to cover the whole thing from end to end for the purpose of trying to further submerge all these rocks that you see. I don't care if I totally cover them, but I want to make sure I have some depth, because since so much resin has leaked out from these end pours, it's really hard to tell how much depth there is. I mean, I can't get down there to see how thick the resin actually is. So I can't really tell, how much of these rocks are submerged. So if I go through and try to pour enough to cover everything, that should give me a better idea on what the resin's going to look like. I have decided to go ahead and tint it a little bit, just because I don't think that could hurt. The tint that I used on this one was pretty light, but the reason it's so dark was because the underlayment was really dark. So I'm going to go ahead and try it with these lighter colors. And that way, if it does turn out that you can see the rocks pretty clearly, then the tint ought to cloudy that a little bit to represent how you can see through to the bottom in parts of the river, but not completely. The other thing I'm going to do is I have all these Woodland Scenics detail products here for water effects, for rapids, for whitewater highlight. So I'm going to also test that. And the point of that will be to see if I can hide, or not hide, but well, possibly hide, but I want to make sure that I can simulate the fact that this is more or less rushing water, the length of the river on the layout. So we're going to mess around with that once this new big pour cures. So I'm hoping I can have a final video with results of, I might do another one on an update on the ripple or on the water effects. I'm not sure yet, but I think we're only a couple, 1 or 2, 3 more segments before I've done all I can do on the test bed, and then it's time to make decisions about the actual layout river. So hang on, let's see what we can get done here next. All right, so here's the results of the final pour. I basically poured enough, I think it was about 6 ounces, to do a full, similar level. I'm not using the right words here, I can't think of them right now. But it's all basically the same level of resin across the entire test bed. And that was because I gave up on the dams, and that's fine. I'm not worried about the dams anymore. But I just wanted to see what some depth would do. And as you can see, a lot of the stones now are completely covered. And this is what really attracted me to this product. And I'm sure a lot of resins can do this, but especially the river tables that I saw on Epodex's website from the customers. And seeing, being able to clearly see the stones underwater is what I was going for, because that's what you can see in the Arkansas River. Now, I was going for a little bit more of a cloudy look to the water. I did add some dye, but as you can see, there clearly wasn't enough dye because it's, a crystal clear picture. So I still have to work on getting the dye right. But I used most of the Epodex that I ordered. There's probably not enough to do another pour, because I don't want to, pour a bunch of the primary resin and then not have enough hardener. So I've ordered some more. I've ordered a 1.5 gallons so that I'm prepared to do my first pour on the river. But this definitely tells me that I'm happy with the product. And I just have to do some more work on the riverbed, get my final color selected, get some more detail added. I think I'm going to add some more gravel because my wife commented that it looks like it's kind of like these rocks are just sitting in mud, and she's right. So I need to add some more, I can't think of any words today. Just gravel texture. That's what I was looking for. Texture to the bottom, so it doesn't just look like it's muddy. So I think I'm going to go with a full coverage gravel of multi sizes, primarily small. I did have that sanded grout below, but I think when I painted it too thick, and so you really can't see any of that. But it could be that the sanded grout is just too fine a detail to be seen anyway. So far, pretty happy. I'm not upset that the dams aren't going to work. It just means we're going to have to do a deeper pour, which is why I went with this product. It's a deep pour product. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is this product really advertises that you don't have to worry about bubbles. And it is true, because when I was mixing, I didn't do the best job of trying to avoid bubbles, but you could just watch them lift right out, even during the mixing. And as you can see here, there are none. I can't find any. And so I've seen lots of those products where people are having to blow the bubbles out with a straw or use a heat gun or whatever, or just be very careful about how they poured. And I wasn't careful at all. And there are just no bubbles. And so definitely don't have to worry about that with this product. Not sure if it's worth an extra expense. If it is an extra expense, but it's one less worry for sure. So the next thing I'm going to do is start working on these water effects to see how much they're going to obscure everything. Because I think with the surface of the resin being all kinds of different angles with the ripples, that's probably going to obscure some of these rocks and the river bottom. But we're going to test that out. I think I need to wait another day for this to cure fully. And then we're going to work on those water effects. So probably just one last update once I get those on to see how that looks. And we'll be done with the test. So hang on, I'll be right back. Okay, so I've added some texture to the water to help with mimic rapids. And I've added some kind of white cap, some paint using some Woodland Scenics products. This is my first attempt to simulate rapids. They're definitely curious what you guys think. I think this is probably it for this test bed because I'm happy with the resin. I've learned my lesson about the dams, how they won't work. And I've learned a lot of other techniques that I'm going to need to know for the river. I still have to obviously decide on a permanent river bottom color, but as you can see, once you add the rapids, the texture, and the color, the river bottom starts to kind of wash out. Plus, here in a few places, I think I've added too much large rock because the Arkansas River is navigable, which means it can be rafted, and I don't think anybody would be able to raft through that. So I need to add a lot more small rock. I might do a couple other test beds. That's why I only used half of this sheet of plywood. But all that's going to be is doing little small samples to work out how the gravel might look and the colors of both the water and the bank. I'm not going to bore you with those. I think you've seen how I'm testing those. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wait until I do the actual river pour to show you how that worked out. But this whole first video was just doing a test bed and trying out all these techniques and seeing how that worked out. And I think I've done that. So if any of you guys have any comments before I do my river pour, it's probably going to be, maybe another week or two after this is posted, because I still have to figure out those paint colors and the dyes for the resin itself. But I'm getting about 1.5 gallons delivered here this weekend, so I'm going to have the materials on hand. I do still have to finish the river itself. I have to add all those details, but maybe another couple weeks, but we're almost there. So hope everybody enjoyed or learned something or had some comments to make after this whole test. And put this together and post this on Friday, which I guess you guys will know. There's no point to say that. But I guess that's it for now. We'll see how the real thing goes.